There's something about this time of year when summer starts to wind down and cooler nights roll in that makes me want to nest. I want to light candles, wrap up in a blanket, cook something that makes the kitchen smell good, and just fall in love with being inside and at home after a very busy summer. If you're feeling that too, Macy's has everything you need to cozy up your space and treat yourself while you're at it. Whether you're dreaming of curling up in buttery soft hotel collection sheets, upgrading your kitchen game with all-clad cookware, or giving your space a whole new refresh, Macy's has you covered from room to room. Shop now at Macys.com or in-store.
I was not what they wanted in a sexy Terry, at least the guys that were hiring. I was too loud, I was too smart, I was probably too ambitious. The people that were interviewing wanted long legs and no last name. Another guy wanted a curvy redhead, and it was allowed.
Today's guest is Elaine Goldsmith-Thomas. Emerging from the male-dominated landscape in the 1980s in the entertainment industry, Elaine shattered barriers at the William Morris Agency to become a powerhouse agent behind women like Jennifer Lopez, Julia Roberts, Madonna, Susan Sarandon, Tim Roberts, Spike Lee, and Nicolas Cage, among others. She jumped ship and decided in a bold career pivot to transition as a studio head writer and producer.
And I was like the one who did the girl movies, the 1330s, the Mona Lisa Smile, Made in Manhattan.
Today, she's the producing partner to Jennifer Lopez and president of Lopez's Nuyorican Productions, and she continues to drive groundbreaking projects. But what we get into today is the birth of her book, Climbing in Heels, a fictional tale about 5 women at the hottest talent agency in the 1980s in Hollywood.
It's sexy. They made me do it. I mean, it was sex. There was...
Who doesn't want that?
That's blowing blowjobs. It's the 80s.
She shares today her perspective on what is failure and when to pivot.
Sometimes the worst things in life bring you to the best places.
If you feel stuck, don't overthink it. Just pivot.
My mom passed away in 2021. When she died, I thought, can I stop running now?
I'm Rebecca Minkoff, and this is Superwomen. Each week, inspiring women are interviewed to uncover the unexpected journeys, the challenges, and the unwavering spirit that makes them powerful. Get ready to be motivated by stories of resilience and discover the keys to unlocking your own potential.
Elaine, welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I was so excited when your email hit my inbox because I just saw Climbing in Heels and book, and I was like, I already know this is going to be good. Before we get into the book, I want to hear a little bit of your backstory about how you started, and then did any of that inspire the book, which I'm assuming some of it did.
Oh, yeah.
So let's brag about your accomplishments, because I know some. You got into the industry at what age?
20, because I graduated early. Very much like there's a character in the book, as you know, named Beanie Rosen. And Beanie, like me, was from San Fernando Valley. She was born in Pacoima, but her mother called it Arleta. And then they moved to Sepulveda, but her mother called it Northridge. So she never knew where she lived, but she knew it wasn't good enough for her mother. Beanie and I share some of the DNA, not all. And it's certainly not an autobiography, but I too was from the Valley. And I too shared that origin story. And like Beanie, I had a boyfriend that I loved. I mean, I'm, 5'8". He was 5'4" in lifts. I felt tall when I stood next to him, and not just because I was, or maybe because I was, but I just worshiped him. And whatever he wanted, whatever he needed, I wanted to sort of be the officer that delivered him the yes, whatever it was. My father was a salesman, and he taught me that no just meant try again, try harder, figure out a way through. And my mother was my fuel and my kryptonite.
I love that you say that. I'd say the same about my mom.
Well, yeah. And as you know, Climbing in Heels really is a story about 3 women, but it's also a story about 3 women and their relationships with their mothers. Sometimes becoming them, sometimes being repelled by them, sometimes trying to prove themselves. And I guess for me, I was trying to prove myself. And so my mom was a bit of a scorekeeper, and my dad was a bit of a you can do it. And between the two of them, I became a product of both. So when this young man wanted an agent, I said, I'll get you an agent. By the way, when he wanted to meet another girl, I went, I'll be friends with her. I mean, there was, the low self-concept was absolutely there. And so I just wanted to somehow be connected to his happiness. So he said, how can you get me an agent? I said, oh, my cousin is a famous composer, which he was, but it was distant and I wasn't about to ask him, but I didn't tell that to this boy. Instead, I put a list of franchise agents together from the Screen Actors Guild, and there were about 5,000 of them. Tiny, tiny print, 2 sides of paper. You wouldn't believe it. And I had all the girls at the card store, put them in order of, Hollywood, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. And I started at the William Morris Agency. And I went in very confident with his portfolio under my arm that I had paid for.
Wow, you really did love him.
Oh my God, taking the money from my parents' sock drawer. I don't know what happened to it. And just wanting to somehow make him proud, maybe. And I said, I have an appointment with Mr. Morris. And they said, try Forest Lawn. And I said, oh, no, silly me. They went, well, or Memorial Park. I said, I just want to get in. And I learned that you had to get friendly with the receptionist to get to the secretary, and friendlier still from the secretary to get to the agent. And I spent the summer trying to get past the secretaries, all the while tap dancing for this asshole, right? Oh, my cousin's out of town soon enough, don't worry. And, offering to do a host of sexual favors. It was pathetic, but it taught me something, and it taught me not to give up, I suppose, because by the end of summer, when I was supposed to go away to Berkeley, I went to a place and I was desperate. It was, days ahead of when I was leaving. And I saw this agent walking behind the scrim. And I was like, excuse me, can you talk to me for 5 seconds? I've got like Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Steve McQueen, every short actor I could think of. I was like citing them in this portfolio. What's it going to cost you to see them? It'll take 10 minutes. And he looked at me and, I had hair down in my ass and I was this sort of, all eyes, all hope. Please say yes. Please say yes. And he said, it'll cost me 10 minutes. And he turned around and I said, and if you don't do it, you're going to be driving down Sunset Boulevard a few years from now and you're going to see his face and you're going to say, why didn't I take that time?
Wow.
And he turned around and he said, the best thing about him? I said, no. He said, you.
Wow.
And I said, does that mean you'll see him? And he said, yes. And Rebecca, my heart was in my throat when he said yes. I ran to a payphone because it was before cells. And I called him and I said, I have an appointment with an agent. And then I went away. And maybe a couple of weeks later, the agent signed him. Because, again, he wasn't without talent. And he was super cute.
Is it someone we know?
No. Excuse me. I wasn't his agent. Otherwise, you would have known him. No. So I went away. And in those days, you got the role and then it aired. So he had this role I'd heard on Chips. And I got everyone in my dorm looking at it. We had 4 lines. And I remember calling him. Finally, he answered. And I said, that the nuance you had with Punch. And it was so, you saw that? Yes, I saw it. I just wanted him to know that I believed in him.
Yeah.
And then by Christmas break, he got a semi-regular role on Happy Days. And I thought, well, that's it. His face will be chiseled into the Mount Rushmore Hall of Fame. And I hope he knows at one point that I was I hope he remembers me, whatever. He ended up dumping me. You got to stop calling. I hang out with Donnie Most now. We're like this. And I was brokenhearted. But I'll tell you something. I never forgot the thrill of the yes. And being able to sell somebody I believed in, I was so good at it. And the interesting thing was that one of the most painful, I'm making light of it now, and I really did love him, experiences brought me to a part of my career I might not have done, because I've always been a writer. I've always been a storyteller. And I might have just gone that way, but for this guy, I didn't. And so when I graduated college, I remembered. And I went back to the William Morris Agency. It was only a few years later. The same receptionist was still there.
And she was like, uh-oh, you again?
And I talked my way in, and my wiggle was more waddle. I was not what they wanted in a sexy Terry, at least the guys that were hiring.
I love you said sexy Terry.
And I figured out a way in, much like Beanie Rosen does in the book. Though I didn't do what she did, I figured out a way. And once I got in, I understood you had to study the rats in the maze to figure out how to run it, especially if you're not the cheese that they want. And I wasn't. So I was too loud. I was too smart. I was probably too ambitious. In those days, at an agency, it was the MALE room. And you had to get into the mailroom to become an agent. So if you were a secretary, you had to say, that's all I want to be.
You knew, okay, I got to start downstairs and work my way up. Or you figured that out pretty quickly?
I was having a hard time becoming a secretary because, you know, the people that were interviewing wanted long legs and no last name. Another guy wanted a curvy redhead. And it was allowed. It wasn't only allowed,
Don
it was
Draperville.
It was celebrated. And this was the 80s. And so I was hired by this wonderful woman. In the book, Beanie sort of strategizes a way in sideways and meets two other women who are also figuring out their own paths and heels. But yeah, so I became an agent and I was good at it. I was really good at getting the yes, because getting the yes meant love. The yes meant acceptance. The yes meant I was smart enough. And it's not a science, right? It's knowing how to blow the wind. You know, people put their fingers in their mouth to see which way it's blowing.
How did you know, as you rose through the ranks and eventually became one of the top agents there at William Morris, which I imagine is no easy feat, you knew you're getting into a male-dominated environment. You knew it's a sexualized environment for women. How did you know how to navigate this and come out without...
Well, you don't know. I don't think you look at it, especially in the 80s and the 90s. So I was really an agent more in the 90s. And I had left William Morris and gone to ICM. And that was scary, too.
Maybe you didn't know, like the women that... My former president, she came up in the garment industry in the 80s. So same story, you know. She knew it was wrong, but there was no other option, like some of the things that occurred. And she knew that she deserved more and better and whatever, but it wasn't going to be necessarily given to her. So she had to almost act in many ways with male characteristics to get to that spot, to win, to become a CEO and president. Did you know this is how the game is rigged? So now I've watched the rats in the maze and I know how to play it?
I think that only in looking back did I understand how treacherous the terrain was. I think when I was in it, I was just in it. And I knew I was good at it. I knew I wasn't what they were looking for. I knew that most of the female agents had been imported, you know, that secretaries didn't make it through. You had to go be an agent somewhere else. You had to prove yourself somewhere else. And I wanted to be at William Morris, maybe because this guy who I had tried to get an agent for had said it was the biggest, maybe because it was the oldest, the most famous, but I wanted to do it. And the more they said no, the more I wanted it. And I don't think I ever thought, oh, this is a male-oriented world and how am I going to scale that mountain? I think I was too busy climbing. You know, I like to say that some people play the referee. They cry foul. Meanwhile, the game's down the field. I was too busy being in the game to cry foul. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who started when I started, who was in the mailroom. He said, hey, can I have some kepi? Meaning head. And I went, how do you ask me that? And he went, you don't ask, you don't get. And it was people like Harvey Weinstein weren't the exception. They were the rule. That was what was happening. So I don't think it would have dawned on me to go, this isn't fair. I think it was, okay, so how do I do it? How do I make them like me? How do I make them see my value? How do I convince them? And it became, again, a quest. You know, the quest, you're trying to be good enough for your mom. It was trying to be good enough for them so that they would go, wow, she's good. And it became that. I overachieved. And I guess that's how I did it. I think that's how a lot of women did it. You know, back in the 90s, I represented Julia Roberts, who had to overachieve to get equal pay with men. I think all of us as women, when we are raising kids and working, we're overachieving to prove ourselves over and over again, to prove the tenor of our worth, And I think that I did that. And then I was an agent at William Morris. I went to ICM. I became a senior vice president there. But all the while, I wanted to write. And somewhere along the line, somebody told us in life that you had to make a decision to do one thing and only one thing. And I don't know why we bought that lie, because I was too afraid to tell my clients, who were big movie stars, that I wanted to write also, because they only wanted their agent to be their agent. But I wanted more. And so I was quietly writing, or I was calling directors or writers going, I have this idea. If you did this in the script, what do you think? It wasn't about credit. It was just about being a part of that part of the process. That's really what I wanted, until I thought, if I don't do it now, I never will. And kind of with my eyes closed and holding my breath, I left at the top of my game.
Was that terrifying?
Yes, but I don't think I took the time to explore how terrifying it was.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if I'd have thought about it, I'd have gone, what are you doing?
Yeah. What gave you I'm doing it anyways?
Because I thought at a certain point, the odds are most clients leave you. And I'm at the top of my game, and maybe I can use that to get closer to what I want to do. And I didn't right away. I went from being an agent to running a studio on the East Coast. And it was something called Revolution Studios. And I was the only female partner. All the males were out in LA. And it was funny because they all kind of called themselves partner. And I was like the one who did the girl movies. The 1330s, the Mona Lisa Smile, Made in Manhattan.
Oh, just those movies?
Yeah. But those were the girl movies that were shooting on the East Coast. And I think when I left, I realized I didn't have the insulation of my clients. So it was on me. And my first movie that I produced was Made in Manhattan. And I wrote much of it out of necessity, because the script wasn't ready and we had a start date. And I didn't take a credit. And I think I realized, once again, I was in a game to prove myself to my boss. And my boss was great, Joe Roth, a really kind man who knew that I wanted to write, and prove myself to an industry that had seen me as an agent. Would they see me any other way? And would they be kind? I was afraid of their judgments and of failing. And so I kept my writing very quiet. Very, very quiet.
For how long?
Years.
Wow.
I wrote a lot without credit. And funnily enough, when I did take credit, I don't know, 10 years later, I ended up getting rewritten. The director ended up rewriting. It was less of my words in the one that I did take credit for. But it was actually Jennifer Lopez who, first of all, she lives by example. She does more than one thing. She was a dancer who became an actor, who became a singer, who became a brand, who became an international icon. And she didn't let anyone's doubt stop her. I do think people's doubt marginalize her talent. I think she's a great actor. I think she's an amazing dancer. I think she's a beautiful singer. But people, when you do more than one thing, they somehow have to, I don't know if it's put you down or belittle you, be reductive, because if you can do everything well, what does that say about me? And she just never let that stop her. And people loved her films, and people love her performing and her singing. And, she's had 80 billion streams. So you kind of go, yeah, there's always like a little cabal of haters. But the truth is she's a massive superstar who is living her life to her fullest. She's not letting other people's ideas of how she should live limit her opportunities, right? We corset ourselves by other people's expectations of who we should be. And God bless her when I said to her, I'm going to write. I think I'm going to write a book. And she said, go for it. And I don't know many superstars who are producing partners, because it took a while to write the book. I mean, I did a lot of it during the pandemic. But who would encourage you to do more. And I remember her saying, you being such a great writer makes you a great producer. She held her hand out and pulled me up.
Wow.
And I don't know, is she a girl's girl? Yeah. But she also supports people's dreams, men or women. Just do it. The only thing stopping you is you. So that's sort of the wild trajectory to how I got to be sitting here at What the Fuck Studios with you.
And climbing in heels.
And climbing in
So
heels.
now we get to talk about the book.
Yeah.
So you wrote it through the pandemic.
I wrote it through the pandemic.
Loosely based on...
It's just ish. You know,
Ish.
Fiction, what
Ish
is it?
based.
Fiction is the window by which we tell the truth. That's a quote by somebody. Not me. But yeah, I wanted to tell the story about three women, Beanie Rosen from the Valley, who's desperately trying to be enough to get the yes. Ella Gaddy from Kentucky, who's the daughter of an ex-debutante who believed that separate was equal. So Ella rebels against that and becomes a rebel, both in look, in manner, and in the fact that she breaks every rule. And then Mercedes Baxter from London, who discovers at the age of 12 that her sister is her mother. And she watches her sister leverage opportunities, what she calls zeros, into marriage. And she basically imitates that. And so these three women collide at a fictional agency called the Sylvan Light Agency in Beverly Hills in the 1980s. And their past, which we revisit and flashback in the book, informs and forms their future. And the three of them end up, for a moment, running Hollywood. And I think the reason it's become such, a hot topic, a bestseller, is that for a moment, you're rooting for them, you're nervous for them, and I hope you forgive them, because it's a story about friendship, it's a story about survival, it's a story about betrayal, and it's a story about how some of the women become very much like the monsters. I like to say like the monsters they work for, but they also become very much like the monsters who bore them.
Ooh. Oh, gosh, that's dark.
It is, and it doesn't feel that, but you realize that we are all sort of pushed out and we're sort of formed by our moms. And it's an endless quest of shedding that skin, honoring that skin, and finding your own skin. So it's funny. It's sexy. They made me do it. I mean, it was sex. There was...
Who doesn't want that?
That's blowing blowjobs. It's the 80s. And I think all three of them come to a place of forgiveness for their own actions, for their moms, and they each step into the future. I won't tell the people how, but a little differently. So it's a fun beach read, and people are like making these crazy videos on TikTok.
I love that.
Like big shoes with climbing in heels, or, guys wearing heels, or they're making up, videos of who they think the women are. And, we're getting ready to do a series on it now.
With Darren Star.
Yeah.
Like, that's fucking huge.
I gave him the book before I was finished. Mainly because I've known him forever. When I was an agent, I represented him.
Okay.
How crazy, how full circle is that? Like, I was involved in Sex and the City way back when. And so I gave it to him because there was a lot of sex in the book. And again, I think I was looking to say, because he knew I was a writer. I had actually, well, to be fair, I had written on Emily in Paris. He had called me. He needed help early on it. And I had helped him. And I'd gone to Paris and worked on it. So he knew I was a writer, and I think he was really curious. And he said he got it, and he was nervous, like, what am I going to say to her? And I don't know, felt like 12 hours later, not kidding, he called me hysterical and said, I can't put it down. Oh, my God, I'm optioning this book. I said, well, I haven't finished. I'm optioning it. I guess 2 weeks later, Universal, he had made this big deal with Universal, contacted my agent and said, we'd like to option the book.
Wow.
And a couple of months later, Peacock said that if we took it off the table, we didn't pitch it anywhere else, we could go straight to series.
Wow.
So, yes. So, oddly, tomorrow, Darren and I are starting. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So we're starting just to put together the idea. And so I get to go back and visit these girls again. And there's so much in my mind. And I so love them. And I won't wreck it for your readers. But, yeah, I don't want to wreck anything. But, it's an interesting trajectory. And we're calling it sort of Mad Men meets Sex in the City.
Love it.
Meets Working Girl a little.
Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah.
So you said something earlier, which a lot of your push and drive was to impress the man or impress your mom. Did you ever, at all these stages of accomplishments, stop and celebrate it for yourself? Or did it feel as good as you thought it would feel once you got the yeah, I'm an agent now? Or yeah, I'm an author? Or, oh, now I'm going to be with Darren Star?
That's a good question. And I've done a lot of these podcasts now. I've done a lot of these interviews. That's a good question. I was writing the book. My mom passed away in 2021.
Okay.
And I loved her. And in the book, I have a dedication to her where I make sure everyone knows she is not Miriam Rosenzweig, Beanie's mother. She is nothing like her, except for the fact that she dined out on me a little bit. And, she watched my waistline. But my mother would have made sure everybody who said they read it, and she would have asked for receipts. And she was my hero. But I think she was terrified. What is she writing about?
Yeah.
And what is it? And is it, it sounds a little close to. And she passed away before I finished. And I'm sad about that because she would so have enjoyed the success.
Yeah.
In a way, maybe even that I don't. I think I'm too busy dancing to see the ball. And when she died, for a minute, I told this to Hoda. When she died, I thought, can I stop running now? Who am I running for? Who am I doing this for?
Right.
It was such an odd experience because I was profoundly can I rest? Then it made me remember the book, What Makes Sammy Run? That was written by Bud Schulberg. I don't know when it was written, the 30s, whatever. But it was, what made me run? And maybe I was running for her. Maybe I still am. But I'm incredibly proud. I'm loving the reception. I'm loving that people love these characters. I was a little afraid to show the desperation of Beanie and how pathetic she was with Fish, and that's his name in the book. And I love how people are embracing her and they see her humanity, even though it's not always pretty what she does.
Right.
And in that way, I'm celebrating it. Yes, but I think I'm so busy, because I still have a day job. I produce with Jennifer.
Right.
So somebody said, "Wait, how are you going to write the show and do the
That
movies?"
was my next question. How are you going to do that?
I don't know.
I mean, she's multifaceted, so we're assuming that you're multifaceted, and we all are.
I guess I'm going to say, watch me. She called me. We were making a movie this spring out in Jersey, and she called me one day. She goes, "Hey, I'm on my way to set. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm in glam." What world is this? And she laughed. I don't know. I guess I will. And I guess if it becomes too hard, then you figure it out. But if you spend your life in the anxiety of what if, Rebecca, you'll never get to find out. So you have to, they say when you're in a riptide, the best thing to do is to float. Don't swim against it. And don't have anxiety about it. The anxiety will come when you're faced with a decision. And then it becomes clear. So to answer your question, was I afraid to leave agenting? I didn't think about it. I just did it. And I kind of think that I've done that my whole life. In 2004, had breast cancer. And it was before it was very vogue to have breast cancer. It's become very vogue, it seems, to have it. In 2004, it wasn't. I just really knew one person, Laura Ziskin, rest her soul, who really helped me. But people say, well, like, how did you do it? I said, you just do.
Yeah.
You don't spend time bemoaning it. You just do. Yeah. And you figure it out as you fall. You figure out how to fly.
I very much identify with your mentality. I've lived my life that way. And anytime I have too much to stop and think, that's when stuff goes wrong, or doesn't go the way you planned because you're just...
Well, it's the time you waste being anxious.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. Don't waste a time where you don't need to be anxious on the anxiety of what's going to happen. And that was hard for me because I'm a prognosticator. Like I'll look, as a strategist, because that's what you have to be when you're an architect of careers, which is what an agent is. You prognosticate, you kind of look, you go, well, I think this person's going to do, I think that movie's going to do what. You're constantly sort of figuring it out and then adjusting your climb.
Are you doing that with the book?
With the book? Well, no, the book took off on its own. It became this crazy viral sensation where people discovered it. And
Were you prepared to? Were you going to?
I was not prepared. I didn't know. Kevin Uvain, who runs CAA, who's a dear, dear friend of mine who started with me at the William Morris Agency a billion years ago, said, just write it. Just see. I didn't ever know if it was going to see the light of day. So that's why I got really deep and dirty and, I'm never going to print that, I didn't know. And then the more I wrote, the better it got. And the better it got, the more excited I got. And then I started reading it to people and going, do you like that?
Yeah.
Is that funny?
Yeah.
And there was no way to plan it. And then suddenly it was going to be a summer read, my very first debut novel. What? Well, you're kidding? And how am I going to... It wasn't hard to write the book. The hardest part has been publicizing it. I don't mind speaking, but I'm not that comfortable being in front of the camera.
Right. Well, you're doing good so far.
Thank you.
You've had a bit of practice.
Yeah, I've been doing it since April. No, but I wasn't. You asked me before, were you prepared? No. But now I get to be selective and go, I listened to your podcast. I went, I like her. Yes, that sounds good. And just...
Who sent it to you? How did you discover it?
Nicola, one of my publicists, had listened to you.
Okay.
And I had seen you on Housewives, and I liked you. So I thought, yeah, that sounds fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited for you, for the book, for Darren, for the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This next year is going to be challenging in a way I hadn't. And so when it is challenging, what you have to do is take bite-sized pieces. You can't go, how am I going to do this? I fucking don't know how I'm going to do this. You just go, okay, so today I'm doing this and tomorrow I'm doing this. And that's how I'm living right now, in a very kind of managing my anxiety. And I'm writing a lot, which makes me so happy. I feel like it took me all this time to come to where I always wanted to be.
Right. But all of that prepared you and gave you a lot of good fodder for good stories.
It gave me fodder. It helped me see that you can do more than one thing. Don't make a decision when you're 20 and think that's the only thing you can do in life. And sometimes the worst things in life bring you to the best places.
So true. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you. This was easy. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And I love your bags. I love what you do. I love that you have pivoted. I love that in your climb, in heels or flats or tennis shoes or barefoot.
All of them.
I love that you've tried on different shoes. And I think that that's the lesson, if there is a lesson, right? There's no straight line. This woman who was my mentor, Sue Mingers, said, honey, my career wasn't planned. It just happened, right?
Yeah.
And that's the lesson.
Yep.
It just happens.
It just happens. You're the best.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, take a second to rate and review the show wherever you're tuning in. It really helps others find the podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff and at RM Superwomen, or for a slice into my personal life at Becky Minkoff. And don't forget to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. See you next week.